Hey, good morning, friends. Welcome. Glad you're here, and another beautiful day in the neighborhood. To say hi to all the folks out there. Of course, we got Dawn. How are you, my friend? Lewis, Steve, Joe, Timeless Journey. Good to see you, my friend. We got to get some jamming going on. I'm running out of stuff, man. You can tell. Hey, Cammie Isley. Great to see you, my friend. Nachiketa. Always good to see you. We got to chat again soon. Holly Berry, how are you? Good to see you. Ramadan Baldit. Deep. Okay. Winston, good to see you. Always, my friend. All the usual suspects are here. I love it. Mark, how are you? Chelsea and Conspiracy Mystic and Young Love. It's great to see you guys here. It's terrific. Hey, Tommy Paint. I'm loving the the staff. This morning, what are we going to do? I had probably a deeper idea here, but I think I'm going to sort of leave it somewhat up to you. I've been watching the things going on around us, and I don't want to beat some of this stuff to death. I'm sure everybody, we covered it on Wednesday night on Secrets of Saturn, taking a look at what's going on with the election and how this appears to be going down. And so, I gave my call weeks and weeks and weeks ago about and it seems to be still pretty close. Ceiling Fan Man and I have we talked at length a couple of times about the way that we see the script play out. And we first talked about this in the context of sporting events, sports ball, and how we were able to both see within just the first few minutes of the game the way that they were calling it and the way it was kind of turning out. And so we could kind of figure out what was happening. And pretty much there was about 6 different ways it could go. But once you kind of figured out which of those scripts they were going to go by, you could really kind of take care of the whole thing. Well, this seems to be, you can sort of overlay this, or as Mark Bloom would say, transpose it. To some of these other events. And so as you begin to kind of look at these things in terms of once you learn the means and methods, you're able to take a closer look at what's going on around you and have a better idea of the way the script is going to play out. Now, they do try to throw you some twists and turns and keep you on your toes. But for the most part, what I've been observing around us in terms of the mainstream media is so childish, it is to be just astonishing. They really do seem to expect that people are just mindless zombies. And then, of course, when you look around you, maybe they're not wrong. I mean, because largely we know what they've done is they've turned people into mindless zombies who want their thinking done for them. It's too difficult to work this all out yourself. And if you have your own view of things, well, you're certainly not going to be part of the group anymore because it's definitely required that you be part of the group. My wife and I were talking at length about this and about the kind of the left versus right scenario. And of course, neither of us really buy into it. Now, we have our own ways of looking at things, which from the outside, and certainly you see this in terms of social media, right? The moment that you start calling into question what somebody believes, they take it as a personal attack. And they suddenly they immediately put you on the other team. Oh, well, if you take a dim view of the Democrats, then suddenly you must be a big Cheeto Jesus lover. No, no, I'm not. If you take a harsh view of some of the things the Republicans do, then the Republicans call you a hard lefty and a commie and all that stuff. And of course, that's not true either. In terms of the way this works, of course, what you can see is it's a very simple solution to take a look at what happens during what I call the indoctrination camps. Really, the public school, right? And whoever thought that was a good idea? I mean, putting the education of generations of children in the hands of the government. That seems like a recipe for disaster, and it is. So now people live in a virtual world, a world that doesn't really exist, only by virtue of what you believe, the things that they tell you. And of course, they give you all of this bad news over and over, and so people get scared. And of course, it's been proven over and over psychologically that people who are afraid are much easier to control. We can certainly see this going all the way back to, if you look back at the news reports and the media from the 50s. Right, you can tell that they were big on the communist scare, and the bomb was going to get everybody. And I know people who were traumatized their entire lives. They're older than me, but they were traumatized their entire life by all those duck and cover practices they did in school and all the films that they saw. And they were certain that death from above was going to come at any moment. Nothing they could do about it that was going to destroy not only all of civilization, but the world. And so as this story plays itself out, you can certainly see that not only did that not happen, but when you look back at the things that they saw and believed as true, it seems preposterous. In the same way, you look back at some science fiction films from the 50s and 60s, and the special effects are laughable, but they seemed believable to audiences then because they weren't familiar with it. In the same way, we can look back at some of the propaganda that's being used on people and certainly began to tear it apart and see what is going on there. It's simply a tactic to create fear. And so we can certainly see that, for example, with the Russian scare, what this allowed to happen was the military-industrial complex to get a firm foothold and to tax the crap out of the American public, to scare them to death and say this is necessary in order to prevent us from communists taking over our country or blowing up the whole world, ending life as we know it. And so they were more than willing to do that. It was patriotic. And then, of course, you had the commie scare, McCarthyism, right? And all these things designed to keep you willing to let Big Daddy government take care of you. And we see this over and over again. It's certainly not a new phenomenon. They just changed the names of the players. So whether that is an invisible pathogen, the beer bug, or, Ebola or Zika, swine flu, whatever that is, they use these things to scare you. And, of course, you can't do anything about it. So you gotta acquiesce to their taking care of it for you. Or it's terrorist, right? Some scary guy in a cave with a towel on his head, right? Doing naughty things like we see here. No planes, because there weren't planes, but this is pretty much what we saw. And they told us that out of nowhere, they could come to your hometown, to a mall, or anywhere else, and just blow you up. Well, you got to have somebody protect you from that, right? So they continue with this doctrine of fear and scaring the crap out of you, whether it comes from someone on the ground or perhaps even it comes from, outer space in the form of an asteroid or, an alien civilization like Independence Day come here to take over the world. Or they might be friendly, or there might be some friendly ones here to save us from the bad ones. I think we'll see that script come out as well. But ultimately, what we find is that these things appear to be well planned, thought out, and scripted. So I invite you to take a look on Wednesday nights. Wayne McCroy of Alchemical Tech Revolution, Jason Lindgren, Secrets of Saturn, sometimes Crow, other people, and myself. We'll talk through these things, and Wayne has done a remarkable job of snagging a whole bunch of these documents, many of them publicly available. They're easy to get. They're just not, well publicized. And we walk through them, and you can see how clearly these things have been scripted. So whether it's Lockstep or whether it's, Dark Winter, and they're using those names now openly, to tell each other. I was going to say to tell you what's coming, but really it's to tell one another what the next thing is happening. These things are planned out. They don't happen organically. Because you see, when left alone, most people just want to live their lives. They're not interested really in taking something from someone else. I mean, there are those people who would try, I suppose. But especially in a condition of lack, right? We see these in post-apocalyptic movies, Mad Max, where there's scarcity. And so groups of people get weapons and they go out and harass and terrorize other people to get what they want. But for the most part, again, if they take away this idea of scarcity, because if you really look at it, there is plenty not only they tell us that we're overpopulated, right? I don't really buy their numbers of coming up on 8 billion humans now. I just don't buy it, because when you do the math and you start doing just very simple mathematics dealing with population growth, and there has to be a certain level of population growth just to keep it from collapsing, because people, die before they hit maturity, have to have reproduction, blah, blah, blah. And so even at a very, very small, like 1.2% population growth, it gets out of control really fast. And so there can't be, the numbers that they tell us cannot be, is just not consistent with the way that they tell us history happened. It's impossible. It just doesn't work. And so I don't think there's that many, for one. And for another, whenever you get to, again, the idea that we're overpopulated, if you look at the square footage or square mileage of just the land that we know about, let's just discount the idea that there probably is additional land. I mean, I think Cammie's shown pretty well just in terms of the electromagnetic fields. There must be other land just in the space of what we know. But again, we don't know of it. There's certainly a lot of place to hide it out there in the Pacific Ocean, and the way that they have presented the world seems to be misdescribed. And so with all of this stuff going on out there, again, what they've done is to hide from us the truth about the world that we live in, our history, who we are, and what we're capable of. You're here for the laughs. I know this is this is kind of a down one, I think, but it's not hopeless, right? There certainly is hope. But again, this idea that we're overpopulated, right, and we're gonna just start eating each other, Soylent Green, it's poppycock. Again, you could put the entire world's population into the state of Alaska with a square mile per each person. And, or at least a family in every square mile, and you'd be fine. Now, of course, that's just space, right? It wouldn't be sustainable in terms of, in terms of providing food and that sort of stuff. But that's just to give you the idea, right, of how the premise that we're overpopulated and everybody's going to die because there's just too many people just doesn't work. And what's really happening, right, is they cram people into cities, so everybody in the cities, which is a large preponderance of people, feels like, wow, it's overcrowded. Yeah, because you're living in the city where they overcrowded you, right? And then they create artificial scarcity. They tell you that it's fossil fuel. There's not enough of it. And yet again, we know that oil is abiotic and that it is not made from dinosaurs and grass and trees. That took millions and billions of years to turn into oil. That is simply not the case, and demonstrably so. So, too many dummies, maybe. Well, flat accord music, I think that they certainly got turned into dummies, right? I don't think we were designed that way, but I do think that many people accept what's been happening, and they accept what they're told. Right. And certainly, we get this truth in the movies, lies in the news. Right. And so, just the same way we see the Truman Show, here's a great line from that. People accept the reality with which they are shown. Right. Because we want to trust, and especially we're told to trust our leaders and trust those in authority. And so people do. Right. Why would they lie to us? Why indeed? As it turns out, I think everybody that's here is pretty much on the same page. If you're not, you got a lot of catching up to do, I'm afraid. But why indeed would they lie? Well, for a whole bunch of different reasons. And what do they lie about? Everything. Everything you can imagine. Everything imaginable. Everything that certainly is meaningful. Again, from the history of who we are, where we came from, everything, science and the nature of the world. It's all a lie. But chemistry, but look, we've gone through this before. You can misdescribe something in a way that still kind of works, but it doesn't tell you the whole story, and it certainly makes it way more complicated than it has to be. In the same way I describe music, right? You could describe music as a mathematical formula and use algorithms, statistics, and complex derivatives to describe what music is. But ultimately, that's not necessary. It would keep everybody from being able to play even the simplest of tunes. Right? So when you begin to describe it in a different way, something that you can make sense, it becomes very easy. So most people do live in sort of a fantasy world. As you see on the screen now, they take facts and turn it into fake. But so many people now believe it that they fight to keep it. And so the simple use of basic psychology, right, that when you're young, you accept things at face value. And you're also told to respect your elders, right? And you can trust people in charge to take care of you and tell you the truth. So who's lying? Well, most people around you are not lying, right? They're just repeating the lies that they've been told. So are they really lying? Well, they're sincere, but sincerely mistaken. And this is, again, goes with everything from history to, science and outer space and the news. Even people that I know that some of them still work in media, they really believe what they're being told. But again, they're not journalists. They're newsreaders. They just pull it off the wire and somebody gives them the information and they just repeat it. And they have their opinions about it, so they interject their opinions in it, which is, when I went to college, that was absolutely verboten. You did not introduce any of your own feelings into any of your opinions. In fact, you went out of your way not to do that. It was definitely called yellow journalism or slanted journalism. It was absolutely, you don't do it. But now it's not only acceptable, but that's the nature of news entirely. I mean, I would say watch CNN for an hour, but I don't want to recommend it. Stick your head in the oven and light a match. No, I don't recommend it. I do it for the Poppycock Report, right? And I do it to keep my finger sort of on the pulse of what's happening so I can better understand the nature of the lies. But it is still depressing, right? To watch not only it happen, but how many people believe it. And then the interactions that you have with people certainly demonstrate this bit of psychology as well. When they accept a premise and hold it as a belief, if you question those beliefs, they take it as a personal attack, that you are now attacking them and their veracity and who they are as a person. What, are you calling me a lawyer? You think I'm stupid? No, didn't say any of those things. But if I am questioning the veracity of the information that's been told to you, but they now consider you the enemy. And so they cannot open up their minds to even entertain the idea that there might be something amiss, even though the information is all around them. The evidence is all around them, and they simply cannot see it, right? Moreover, we desperately need to be as part of a group, a society. And throughout time immemorial, this was literally done in a family setting and in tribal senses, our extended family. And so we were part of something greater than ourselves with people who, for the most part, looked like us, acted like us, talked like us. And so you protected them and they protected you, and you could trust them because they were your family, literally. Well, when they, of course, one of the things, they turned that into nationalism. And so the guy over that line right there is bad, right? And so everybody within this, on this side of the line is good. Everybody on that side of the line is bad. Well, what do you do when that line changes constantly? World War I, World War II. It kind of confuses things. And what do you do with nationalism? And so, again, all this goes to the idea of, well, okay, we'll get rid of those borders and we'll all be one world. Well, again, the problem there is who runs that world? You see, and most of the ideas that they present to us are, they have good arguments behind them, especially given the nature of the way that they've set things up, problem, reaction, solution, like the idea of digital currency, right? It solves a number of problems, but it creates many more, right? So the problem is, again, who's instantiating that? Who owns it? Right? Well, and what can they do to you? So it gives them the information to track you, every purchase that you make. They can turn it off if you don't comply with what they want. You're at their mercy. So in every case, all the things that they sell as being a good thing, like a vaccination, right? It'll keep you healthy, right? Turns out to be very, very bad, largely by nature. Who's running the show? We certainly do know that those who are running the show are not friends to the rest of humanity. Most of us in this community spend a good deal of time looking at or trying to figure out who they are, right? They live. But who are they? Right? We spend a good deal of time trying to figure that out. I think everybody's got their ideas, and certainly we can point to a few groups that we know have been involved over time. Jesuits and Catholic Church certainly was involved, and of course that puts dings into religion, right? Anything to turn you away from finding your Creator. So they put the religion up in between you and the Creator, and then make religion clearly bad, and then you go, oh, the Creator must be bad as well. If they represent the Creator, then by virtue of them being horrible, so must the Creator be. Well, having come into relationship with the Creator myself, I can tell you that they certainly don't represent Him, and they are, in fact, the exact opposite in most ways. Nothing is further from the truth and closer to our enemy than those who run religion. Does that mean all spiritual things are bad? No. Does that also mean all spiritual things are good? No. Right? There's all kinds of detours and traps to keep you from finding the truth. So, what do you do? Where do you go? Well, one of the things is that, again, this is what I've been working on the Awakening Project for nearly a year now. And I have to admit, I'm actually terribly behind schedule, in part because of all the other things I've taken responsibility on. And I apologize for that. I keep trying to work on it a few hours a week, and I still have a few dozen things to really dig through, because most of the information I get is not just from the straightforward MBTI and the date of birth. It's actually from the stories, and I've read them all, and I kind of make notes here and there. But actually extracting the data is something that takes time, and you have to look for patterns and try to play match game to see where did I see that before, and what can I extrapolate from that. And so it's a daunting process. There's a lot of good stuff that I've gotten out of it, and I had intended to reveal some of that this month. I've got some charts and graphs and that sort of thing. But ultimately, I think it's going to, I intended, really wanted to get phase 2 started at the first of the year, and I'm just so behind. I admit that I'm not trying to make excuses. It's just I am behind, and I regret that, because I think it's important to have a better idea of not only what they've done, but what the process is, sort of like what happened to us, and why do some people awaken and others not, and can we use this information in order to help others who might be amenable to waking up. I can tell you for sure that not everyone is going to wake up. In fact, most people are not, and I just have to put that out there. It's a sad bit of news. But at this point, some people are so inured that they just simply cannot and will not. They will fight to stay where they are because it's all they've got, right? It's their whole world. And if you try to shake that up in any way, they are going to fight back really hard against that, right? And so we definitely have some difficulty with that. And now, as they push this idea of transhumanism, right, and how how great it's going to be if we just join with computers, and how much smarter and better we'll be. And I got to tell you, we can certainly observe, right, what they have done already. So to date, you can look around you, right, and see that most people in the modern world have this idea, right, this premise, that we are the smartest, most clever generation that there's ever been, and anybody prior to us is just retards, right, just knuckle-dragging Neanderthals who didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground, could barely start a fire, ignoring what's right, all the evidence right in front of us of these megalithic structures that we could not duplicate today, and it just is an accident. They just, blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then, so, pyramids, yeah, they just lucked into that, and they just worked real hard over 20 years with a whole bunch of slaves and just back-breaking labor, and you just do it. That's not how it works, right? Again, there are so many aspects of just those structures that, again, we couldn't duplicate any part of today. And so right there, as the information is in front of you, they simply dismiss it. They just want you to close your eyes and dismiss what's right in front of you, so that, you just accept what they say, that they know what's best, right? And so now everybody believes that we're the smartest generation ever because we have technology, right? They've equated technology and the ability to run it with smarts. So you're just smart enough to push the buttons. Ignoring again the very clear, all the indicators that see your brain is really smart, right? We are fearfully and wonderfully made. And so what your mind does, neuroplasticity, it learns to categorize things. And so it's also very efficient. And so rather than keeping the data, it tells you where to go get the data, right? So I don't have to remember it. I know there's a file cabinet over there that's got it in it. And so literally Google makes you stupid because people don't know the information. They know where to get it. And now it's digitized. They can change it at a moment's notice. And then no one can remember quite sure. You introduce up something like Mandela effect to make everybody wonder what's going on there and that they could change things. Well, they certainly are changing some things without getting into any of that, right? I mean, I think much of it is explainable, but ultimately it's what you perceive and believe. And so if you believe that they can change timelines, right? Well, what's to say? And whether you, even if you don't, then you go, well, I just have a bad memory, right? And so I just can't quite remember, just like Animal Farm. I just can't quite remember what was on the wall. And so again, you're left with no choice but to accept what they say as true, right? So no, you didn't really say that. There is, I don't know if I probably shouldn't play it. I don't want to risk a strike, but showing, I played the video and shared with a couple of people this week of just within the past, at the very last presidential debate in the U.S., Biden was asked, and so this is part of what I wanted to get to today, right? So the Democratic nominee Biden was asked directly, and it's an interesting question to be asked. Again, if you think about it, that's kind of what I want to get to. He was asked this question. So will you wait until a winner is certified before before claiming victory? And oh, absolutely, of course, right? He said that. So he pledged. Will you pledge to do that? And he said, yes, of course. Well, just for the record, despite the fact that every media outlet has named, including the traditionally right-wing ones, Fox News, they have named him as the presumptive winner. And yet not a single state has certified the election results. None of them. Right? So what we have here, and isn't that a weird question to ask? Right? Will you wait until it's been certified? Oh, yes. Well, most haven't over the past 50 years. They wait for the projections. All we've got to go on right now is media projections. And so I think in part, what they're clearly showing you is the nature of it being, they just poke you in the eyes. They're laughing. I have mentioned on more than one occasion another content creator, it's fairly popular, Paul Romano over at Pockets of the Future. And he's got an interesting and often humorous take on things going on around us. He has, in the last week, made several videos and asking specifically the question, why are they still trying to convince us? Right, so if they're preaching to the choir, and it seems, that they are, CNN, MSNBC, the traditional left-sided approaches, are, again, they act like children. And you see people like Don Lemon. He's just whining like a child and going, Trump is a poor loser, and there's no evidence. Well, okay, let's stop for a moment, right? There absolutely is evidence that in every election, anywhere, in the world, right? Every election has some voter irregularity, right? People, when there's things at stake, people have a tendency to want to cheat. I've pointed out before that many people will lie just to get a few cents off on a purchase, right? And so the idea that no one would in any way do anything underhanded to win an election under which there is so much at stake is preposterous. And so to dismiss it just with a hand wave, oh, there's no evidence. That's malarkey. It's absolute poppycock. Everybody cheats. And so is it one side? No, I think there's certainly evidence of both sides. But when you look at the script, and this is the point of this presentation today, is there's a script being played out, and it's being written, and they've poked you in the eye with it, and they've been leading with this for rather a long time. So I've been watching as for months now. They've been asking this question, if he loses, will Trump leave the White House? And of course, he's digging his heels in. Will it be contested? Well, of course, it's no surprise that it is. If you'll notice, the places where there's real problems are exactly the battleground states, right? Where one of them needed to flip the other. But when you look at the data, look at the numbers, right? They, in a statistical sense, on the face of it, you can tell that there's cheating going on, or at least, again, that's the story we're being told. It's really hard to know what the actual truth is. In my opinion, again, makes no difference who casts the ballot. It's who counts the ballots. And so we know, going all the way back into at least 2000, right, the Diebold testimony, that they can do whatever they want. You got an electronic voting machine. You can do whatever you want with the data, and no one would ever know. And so Wayne and Jason and I went through, and Crow, we went through the not only the documents, but the history of electronic voting, and showed how their entire purpose is not about, quote, the sanctity or the veracity of actual votes, but to make sure that people trust it, that they trust the process. Because, democracy can't stand if people don't believe that they're actually doing something. But then, again, very clearly, what we can say, is that, Nachikete says Stalin agreed, right? Doesn't matter who cast the votes, it matters who counts the votes. But again, as Mark Twain, or at least that's the attribution, said, if voting actually changed anything, they'd have outlawed it long ago. So what we have here, right, is the illusion of free will, the illusion of choice. And so why did they carry this illusion? So I've been watching a few things develop with some interest, to try to, get a sense of where things are going. Because as we know, it's all a stage. And so they have telegraphed a good deal of these moves. They have told us in advance that they would be hotly disputed, that Trump would not willingly give in. But I noticed a couple of things happen. So I made some early predictions, or at least looking at things and going, this is kind of where it kind of looks. Because ultimately, what you have to consider is, what is the intended outcome, right? The script has meaning, right? You got to come to a conclusion. And so you've got to get to the end of what are they trying, what's the game that they're trying to play? Well, okay, we would say, if you look at the whole thing, what do they want? Well, certainly we can say they want to create this dichotomy, this fight back and forth, the Hegelian dialectic, right? They want that for sure. But ultimately, what do they want? Well, this new world order, right? So they want, what they would call global governance. Well, if you look at what some of the arguments are and what are some of the things that they're doing, it doesn't sort of make sense, right, to get to that point. So what you've got to do is you've got to create enough chaos that people lose trust in one system so they can accept another. Ultimately, that's what we get to. Is it this time? Is it next time? I don't know. It seems like this time, only because, man, they've been sprinting to the finish, right, with this Cernunu, and they're not backing down, they're doubling down. Even though, again, everyone with two brain cells rubbing together can see that the numbers don't make any sense at all. There's nothing scary. You got a 99.9964% chance of survival, and they're going to shut everything down and force vaccinations on everyone. And then, again, they're trying to tell one side, Q, that Trump is the good guy. And yet he comes out yesterday and says, we've got, Operation Warp Speed. We finally got this vaccine. It's an RNA vaccine. It will literally change your genome, but we're going to require that everybody has it. So we got that going for us, which is nice. So who's your savior, really? Ultimately, right, they just need to create enough chaos to pit one side against the other so they can take over. Now, there are a number of different ways they can do that. And one of the things that I had kind of looked at and sort of, I don't want to say predicted, but put into possibility, right, is again that they would kind of go back and forth on this. And certainly it would create a huge chaos if they came out and flipped the vote at this point and said, no, there was, there was voter irregularity. One side tried to cheat. But so the sort of issue with that right now is that one of the things I noticed that was interesting is the traditionally right-leaning Fox News was one of the first to sort of stab Trump in the back, right, and to claim that Biden won. So it's as if they're trying to hold on to their credibility. Because see, what happens here is that the media loses its credibility if they keep saying it's not real, and you guys are conspiracy theorists, and there's no validity to any of this, right? But then it turns out that there is. But by putting enough evidence out there that there is, so that the people on the right feel cheated, right? That's where you get this creation of fervor, right? So it does seem as what they really want to do is to create internal conflict, whether that comes down to actual civil war or not. They're certainly pushing the idea, right, that you're going to have one side against the other. And then, so this is where it gets even more dangerous, I would say, is the recent news that Trump fired the Secretary of Defense and replaced numerous top brass at the Pentagon. Well, that, again, typically indicates, because he put in loyalists, if you were looking at this from an outside perspective in another country, you would say that he's preparing to try to, I don't want to say a coup, but I mean, he's trying to take over there, and so he wants to use the military. Well, if you back up again from the longer game, you would say that we can't allow that to happen if you want to have a smooth transition for democracy. So what do? That's where you pull in the United Nations and say you got to come in and take over. And if you create enough chaos, that's possible. So again, I'm not big on prognostications because, I mean, they can throw all kinds of twists and turns at you. But I think what you have to do is back up and look at this from the flip side. What's the ultimate outcome? What is the intended goal? Because what happens in the interim doesn't really matter, right? So again, when Ceiling Fan Man and I watch or take a look at some of these sports ball events, you can tell, like there's a team here in Seattle that Russell Wilson is, he's good at that magic, right? And so what we see is very often they'll start off a little bit good and then back up and let the other team get sometimes way up on them, and then right at the last minute sort of pull it out. And so often it comes down to the very last play. How many times have we seen that happen, right? So we can kind of just predict that what's going on. The ultimate thing, right, is to create that sense of excitement and that nobody knows what's going to happen, but ultimately the outcome is they win the game. But with these prospects in between, that he's got this ability, so you never know what's going to happen, right? You can always pull it out at the last minute. And so that creates this sense of veracity that they can pull it out at any time. And so that's where I think that what's going on here, right, is that you can kind of dismiss some of it doesn't matter where the fumble occurs or where the interception occurs. You know what's going to happen, right? And it's going to seem that that the flow is going both ways, right? The momentum shifts back and forth, but ultimately you can kind of read the outcome. And so to me, ultimately it gets to this outcome, which is, quote, global governance. If you'll excuse the word globe, that's just the term that they use. But essentially worldwide domination. And so they've got to get people, again, my wife and I were talking about that this morning, that what has happened over long periods, generations, right, is that they have gotten people in the United States, certainly, to believe in this sense of, they're free-range cattle. There's no fences except for, water on both sides and the bad brown people down south and the cold weather up north. You don't want to go there anyway. So, we're trapped in, but we feel like we're free. And so we've got this idea. They gave us this, rugged individuality and without the collectivism. And so they've got to turn that around, where in other places, like China, for example, they used centuries of collectivism from people who lived on farms where collectivism is good, right? You have your family around you. You have your little tribe. But when you use collectivism over a couple of billion people, right, somebody's got to control that. And that, again, opens the door for all kinds of heinous fuckery, most foul. That we want no part of. So this is kind of, again, what I see happening is you got to look at the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal here is to get people to accept their servitude. And then so whether that is the 1984 version, which is the boot on the neck, or what we currently see more of, the Aldous Huxley version, which is those who love their servitude, and that they ask for more protection, control. Oh, the scary beer bug, save us. Give us that vaccine. And bad people that don't want it. You're trying to kill Nana. Right? They cannot see the nature of the world around them. So this is always then, again, I just don't, I'm not big on telling people what to think or to accept my word for it. So what I would just like to point out is take a look at these things with skepticism. Everything, including, what I tell you. If it doesn't hit home, if it doesn't ring true for you, I think that truth does have a certain vibration. There's a certain frequency to it that those who are attuned to it, it touches home for them. It may not be, perfect and all sealed down tightly. Again, I expect, I always say I've got I reserve the right to be completely wrong. And I've been, mistaken here and there, but for the most part, I get base hits, right? If not a home run. But again, don't trust me, even based on my background, whether or not I've been right, or whether, even if you agree, go look at for yourself, because you need to know these things, right? You need to know for yourself what it is that, right, you believe. There are a number of people, you can see this, for example, in the flat earth community, who it rang true to them, and so they have enough information to be, to agree with it. But when faced with the challenge of trying to answer questions, they can't, because they don't really know the information that well. And again, I'm not trying to be condescending to anybody. I'm saying, good on you for waking up, but know it for yourself, right? Study to show yourself approved. So you know these things for yourself. Don't take anybody else's word for it, because if you do, you're just exchanging one person's belief for another, right? You're exchanging the big guy for the small guy. And small guys can lie too, right? I mean, certainly, we've got all these, people in the community for whatever reason. You can do, again, you can make whatever choice you want, but calling shill on everybody and, they're leading you in the wrong direction and they're misleading you. Come on, right? Most people don't do this for any reason other than trying to be helpful, except for those whose only content is to say that other people are bad. Right, so I would be aware of those guys. But ultimately, what I would again say is that just keep your eyes open, right? Learn good discernment and learn to see how these things are done. One of the most eye-opening things to me was to kind of better understand the nature of stage magic. It's misdirection. And that the intelligence community in the modern age, since the early 1900s, has been using that as their go-to source of, that's their means and methods, is the idea of this misdirection. Because people don't even know they've been fooled at that point, right? They think that they're seeing something else, and you can do all kinds of things right in front of their face, and they don't even know it's happened, because they think it's about something different. And this is exactly what we see in the media, right? You think it's about something different when they're doing all this other stuff in the background, right? So you think it's about an election while they're pulling Agenda 21 right over your right over on you, right? And you're like, what just happened? And then they tell you that it's the result of something else. Yes, I would say that is right. What did I see? I don't know if somebody got rid of it, but I saw quickly. Oh, there you go. Conspiracy mystic. Learn not to be a gullible dumb fuck. That's good advice. Yes. That's good. That's good advice. Learn not to be that. But really, again, so much of this stuff, it's on you, right? It's up to you. Now, there are good sources of information, right? And so, I would say that, if you're listening to different content creators, we can point you in the right direction. But I would really say, do the work for yourself. Don't just accept it, right? Because I can poke holes in a lot of the little bits and pieces of almost every content creator, at least to my own satisfaction. But much of it is where I got some of the ideas of like, that's a great question. Like, I didn't, why didn't I think of that? Right. There are some of these things where, again, don't just accept all of it, but don't toss all of it out either. In fact, most of the things that I see are, the crazier it seems, the more likely there is to be a there, right? So definitely take a look for yourself at these things. But ultimately, if you're trying to peek around the corner a little bit, look at the outcome, look at what the goal is and what they're trying to get to. And I do think that there is, from, again, the title of today's show, kind of the subtitle, right? Script or scripture. Well, there certainly is a script going on, and we can see it play out. But I think there's also some information that you can find in some ancient texts that give you an idea, at least some of the context of what's going on. Now, again, the wording is weird, and it leaves it sort of open-ended, so there's subject to a lot of interpretation. But I think some of the pieces should be pretty clear, right? One of the big things there, again, right, is the idea that if you don't get a mark in your hand or your forehead, that you won't be able to buy or sell. It's a pretty basic economic thing. Again, look for that. What exactly is that? I mean, you could insert the blank with a lot of different things here, but certainly that's something you're looking for. But don't be deceived, right? And so be aware of these things. And ultimately, this is always my recommendation, these couple of things here, right? Which is these ideas, is to, again, know for yourself what it is that you believe and constantly challenge those things. And so if you just get one set of beliefs and defend them, you'll never be able to grow, right? You're dead at that point. You're now stuck at a status quo, and you can never learn anything more. So keep challenging, keep going over these things over and over and over, right? But also, again, I would say beyond that is to get to know the Creator. Spend time there, because I don't think they will ever lie to you, the Creator. And when you know that, you'll be able to find your own point of your line in the sand that you're able to defend. And so I say, pick that. Pick the line in the sand that you're willing, beyond here, no further, and guard it. Guard it closely. And so, but I think this is well led by the Creator. Again, I always say, don't trust me. Go straight to the Creator. Ask them, right? Say, Dad, I want to get to know you. If you've never done it, certainly I recommend it. I think they're really, really amazing beings, and who are driven and motivated by love and relationship, and that you cannot go wrong there. And then, again, you don't have to trust me, right? You can check with, if anybody lacks wisdom, let them ask. You can go straight to the source of all information, all knowledge, all truth, all love, and ask the question yourself, right? You don't have to take it from me, or you don't have to take it from anybody else. You can get it from that source directly. And isn't that better, right? You don't have to trust whether somebody's going to flip on you and be a bad person, right? Or you find out that they're lying to you, right? That you've been misled, or just that they were wrong, right? How horrible is that? That somebody that you trusted turned out to be wrong. What's happened to us all, right? We were all mistaken about the nature of the world that we live in. And we trusted people who we considered trustworthy, some of the salt of the earth, but they didn't know, right? They weren't lying to you. They just told you what they knew, and what they knew was given to them by somebody else, and somebody else gave it to them. And ultimately, we get back to somebody had a plan, right? And so if we're going to get to this idea that there is a plan, and if you want to kind of better understand things, you can sort of try to anticipate what's the intended outcome. Now, keep in mind again that this is a slow roll. They have been, and so it's if you were to go back 100 years and look at what they were doing, you might have jumped the gun and said, "Oh, they're moving to this end," and you would have been mistaken. But at this point, I think again, just be on your guard, right? Look at what's going on and anticipate. And again, if you spend the time developing that discernment, you will know for yourself what is right and what is wrong. And you don't have to worry about who you trust, because you'll learn to trust yourself and the Creator. And isn't that really the most valuable part? If you can trust yourself, then what's there to fear, right? Why do you have to be then worried about what your neighbors think, about what anybody thinks about you? Whom shall I fear, right? I love that. And I love that idea. So when you then, if you get to, come over here real quick. So if you get to a place where, let's see, do I have this handy? Let me see if I can find it real quick. Here, right? So you get to this place. Are you going to trust the news, right? So Obama White House veterans urge Biden to embrace executive action. So they've already got a guy who hasn't even been sworn in yet as president to use executive action. He's going to just take over. So everybody's all worried about Trump being a dictator, and yet they're encouraging Biden to be a dictator. And everybody's happy about it, right? So this is where they flip the script on you. Republicans playing with fire, and we all risk getting burned, even with Trump out. Will governing be possible? Again, this is the lie that they're trying to scare you into accepting what comes next. And I've been saying this since the beginning, that even if they did, quote, drain the swamp, I've been saying over and over, whatever comes next is going to be far worse than what you had prior. Probably by orders of magnitude. Because ultimately, they want that control. And they want that, quote, global governance. So it doesn't matter the path that they take to get there. Ultimately, that's the result, what they want. And so you don't, again, have to worry about whether they do it this way or that way. All you have to really pay attention to, right, is it true? And even in the little bits and pieces, like how much, if you were to back up, right, how much of all that stuff, like who's president, how does that really affect you, right? Has it really affect you at a personal level? You go to your job, you do your work, you get paid, you go home. I mean, most of it doesn't matter. What really matters is your heart, how you treat others, right? I don't care about what people believe and think so nearly so much as the way they behave. Now, it's true that what they believe and think often does predicate what they do, right? Jesus said it's the overflow, it's the abundance of a man's heart come his works. And that's true, whether for good or evil, right? So whatever, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Those things are true. But I don't care if he holds a belief that's different from me or a viewpoint that's different. It's his behavior or her behavior that I'm interested in. How do you treat people? Right? So I've said over and over, a lot of people walk around with, religious text in their mouth and hate in their heart. So if your religion doesn't change you, it's worthless. So just saying, right? It's all about the nature of your heart. The preponderance, nearly all of my relationship with the Creator has to do with the condition of my heart and how I treat others, how I treat myself. All the other stuff is just sort of down the list. It's kind of ancillary to the primary thing, which is be the person that you're supposed to be. Nothing else matters at that point. You can't do anything if you're not the person that you're supposed to be. So, be the person that you were created to be. I think that's good advice. So I would share that advice with other people. But I also would say, again, from my position, everybody has their own walk, their own journey. So who am I to tell them how to do it? Right? Ultimately, this is the most beautiful thing that I find, is that no matter what path we take, ultimately, these great people wind up in the same zip code. We're all heading to the same parking lot, and I want to know what's inside that building, right? So it doesn't seem to matter the road that we took to get here. We're all coming to the same place, and that is looking for truth. Well, that tells me something, right? That we're using the right kind of compass. So it doesn't matter the road. So if I tell somebody over there, take this road, I may be misleading them because that road ultimately won't lead them to where they need to go. Because, if I say, hey, go west, and they're over there, they're going the wrong direction. They need to go east or north to get to where they ultimately need to be. So it's not my job to tell people. In fact, it's none of my business to tell people how to do it. All I can suggest, again, is go to the source. That, I know, works, right? Go to the source of everything, the Creator. And, again, I'll point this, if you're not certain about who that is, I'll point this out from observation. Is that love? If love is not the motive, then the Creator is not involved. And so if you think you're doing God some favor by tearing other people down, that's the wrong God. So we got that going, which is nice. All right. So with that, I think I've said what I want to say. I had more to get into, I think, with the details of what we see around us. But ultimately, I think I would answer, for example, Paul Romano's question about why are they still trying to convince us? Because you're preaching to the choir because they're setting it up. Right? They're setting up an emotional response. People don't respond intellectually now. They respond entirely emotionally. And so all these choices are simply emotional responses. They're not thinking at all. And that's what they want, right? They want an emotional response. And so that's how they get what they want, is to get people jacked up and then spring the emotions on them. So that's what you see. So at the end of the day, my encouragement, again, this is not hopeless. What we see around us is ugly, to be sure. There's no question about it, right? But what is hopeful to me is this also means that we're near the finish. Now, that means that there's a lot of bad stuff that's going to happen, but the closer it gets to me to get to the end. So, yeah, baby, don't threaten me with a good time. If not, hey, again, all that matters, really, I think, is that who you are and how you treat people. And that's all you get to take with you anyway, right? None of the stuff you collect gets to go with you. It's who you are and the relationships that you build while you're here. So invest in those. That's the only thing that you get to take with you. So invest in that. No one gets out alive, right? So at least, not that I know of, despite a lot of promises and claims made and becoming a god yourself in some apotheosis or whatever, show me. Show me somebody who's done that right now. That, like, not a few hundred years ago, or show me somebody right now. If there's so much information, if you're so smart, show that to me, right? Demonstrate it, show it me, All right. Until then, I can show at you the hundreds of people that I know whose lives have been changed for the better and who changed lives around them by their connection with the Creator. So there you go with that. I can demonstrate it. Anyway, so with that, again, I strongly encourage you to develop your relationship with the Creator. If you don't know them, ask, right? And if you need even help with that, send me an email. I'm happy to help guide there. Again, you don't have to trust in me. I'm not going to harm you. I've got nothing to gain out of it other than to see people heal their wounds and treat other people well and to get through this, right? And so again, if you know, right, what the end is, you're not affected by any of it, right? Again, Ceiling Fan Man and I go to the football game, right? We both knew what the outcome of the one game was going to be, right? And so none of the other stuff didn't even make our heart rate increase. And everybody else is going crazy, like, I can't take it. And we're just sitting here going, yeah, okay, but we know what the outcome is. So again, what is there to fear? Fear doesn't become a part of this at all. Perfect love casts out fear, right? And so if your actions are in love, fear doesn't become a part of the equation at all, right? You don't have to worry about any of that, right? Take care of yourself. When you take care of yourself, you can take care of others. It's not a selfish thing to do to take care of yourself. To the exclusion of all others, okay, that's probably not helpful. But you got to take care of yourself first, because if you're trying to, fill up other people from an empty vessel, it's just not going to work. Right. So to that end, take care of yourself. Invest in your relationships, both with those around you and with your Creator. Be kind to one another, even in fact, especially those who are bad to you, because you might be able to change their view simply by being kind. All right. So again, I just want to encourage you in that. If you need somebody to talk to, feel free to reach out to me. And I've already had a wonderful experience of getting other people connected to one another locally. So that's been terrific. We had 4 or 5 people now in Finland and getting together fairly regularly. That's awesome. It's outstanding. But even across the United States, people are being able to connect with one another. They just emailed me and said, hey, do you know anybody that's nearby? And we've been able to hook some people up. And so that's terrific. Some of you guys have more connections even than I do, which is really awesome. So with that, again, let me see what I can find here. I'll pull you up with some outro music for the day. And to that end, we'll find something groovy for you here. Well, not groovy. I'm sure you've heard it already. Let's see. And then I just want to invite you, join me again tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time. That's 10 a.m. on the East Coast for Ancient Wisdom for a Modern World. And I'll just read some scripture, and we'll spend a little time together with some noodling, and hopefully that will help you with your day. Tomorrow evening at 5 p.m. Pacific, again, that's 8 o'clock Eastern time, we'll do a 0.5 episode, 11.5, and that is Solar Scripture, and I call it, when Wayne's not here, sort of scriptural. And so I've got some ideas for that, and I'll do an Ask Me Anything at the end of that one. So open the phone lines tomorrow evening and give you a chance to ask questions if you like that. And so with that, I think we'll wrap it up today. You guys are awesome. I'm so delighted to see you guys here. It really, the stories and messages that you guys have given me, especially in the last few weeks, again, just asking for prayers and seeing things happen has been amazing, and just it's food for my soul. So thank you for that as well. Give me the good results, and thanks for reaching out. So with that, let's see, this one's probably from 1994 in that neighborhood called Streams in the Desert, written by myself and Joe Ray, who is Timeless Journey in the chat. And we'll see you guys again tomorrow. Thanks so much, and much love.
Face the day.
across the desert.